There's 52 billion plastic pens that are thrown away every year.
52 billion?
Yeah. You come in contact with this cheap plastic pen so many times, and it's just a shame. When you go to Europe, you see Galleria Lafayette, you see Rinascente in Italy, you see El Corte Inglés in Spain. All these department stores, they have an entire floor of fine stationery. And you have fine paper, and you have fine pen, and you have fine notebooks, and you have Smithson, and you have the $300 notebook that the King of England used. Then you come to the United States, there's absolutely none. When you go to a meeting and you write down instead of digitizing, you retain 70% more information. You are much more creative. You will get better idea. You are more efficient in school when you write down notes instead of digitizing. I'm sure people are going to write books about this, but the Ferrero company, the employee at Ferrero, we were saying at the time was 11 billion. It's an $11 billion company run like a deli.
Rizzo, welcome to All Dots Connected.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Very excited.
So I was very much looking forward to this because, in our first conversation, we were talking about your journey, and it is extraordinary what you've been able to do, taking brands and moving from things that are in many ways across many categories are very much a commodity and making them into a brand that people really emotionally resonate with. You're CEO of AT Cross Company now, but also spent time as president of Moleskin and also Ferrero, which is actually a really interesting brand as well.
Yeah.
Let's start with Moleskin, if it's okay.
Yeah,
because
of
I
course.
thought we're talking about what the founder did, but also what you were able to do with this brand in terms of taking, a notebook, paper, and turning it into something else. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. The founder of Moleskin, Maria Sebregondi, together with other friends, they were really able to take this up. I still use it, even if AT Cross pen we make journal, I still use this too much for 10 years. So they really took this object and they make something that is gonna create a real connection with the person, right? It's not just a notebook. It's a book yet to be written. That's what it was. This really at the beginning, and it's something that it really becomes something personal and something that is just not just a notebook. There's something so precious inside it that it's more important than a passport, right? So Bruce Chatwin, the writer, the British writer, he was using this notebook all the time, and he was saying in his books, like, it's more important. My Moleskin notebook is more important than my passport, because if I lose my passport, I can make another one. If I lose this, I lose all the emotions that I had in that exact moment, and I put pen to paper to it. So I think that was crucial also for the success of the item, because this is not just a notebook; it's something that is much more than a notebook. And also, the founder of Moleskin, Maria Sebregondi, she was able to bring all the heritage back of this note. This notebook has been used by all the artists, and Van Gogh and Picasso. And this little producer outside of France was not producing anymore, and the artists were desperate because it was a specific notebook, with all the characteristic of the notebook. And Maria went back to exactly the way this was produced, and she did it again in 1997. She created the brand, And she used exactly the name that Bruce Chatwin was calling this particular notebook, Le Carnet Noir in France, but he's called in Moleskin in one of the book. And she just she named the company after him, and it was a huge success, even surprised the founder, and that's because it was not advertised as a notebook. It was advertised as a book yet to be written, and for the first time it was distributed as a book inside bookstores. So, and people felt the emotional connection. So I can be a writer on my own thing, and people put in their bookshelf the notebook. They don't use it and throw it away. They use it. So all this to tell you the entire concept is just, do not treat this just as an object. Treat something for yourself. And something stupid like the elastic, right? The elastic is just a password, because this is something so secret. It's all yours. So you don't open it. You don't open it. You don't have it open. Someone that really wants to read you, it has to be intentional. Comes close to you and open up in front of you. Is like, wait a second, that's my lock. That's something that, don't open it. It's my stuff. And it's something simple like the elastic. And I think that's the beauty that I'm so passionate about it, just because Maria was amazing. I had the luck to work with her and learn from her. But also, I was the president of Moleskine America, and we were able to translate this success. While I was the president of Moleskine America, this is a European brand. This was born back in the 1800s. It was in France. Then Maria was Italian. The entire company is Italian, still Moleskine. But America became the biggest region for the group, and that's because I think that the American really were able to appreciate the sleek design, very simple. In the middle of all, if you go to Barnes and Noble, there's all these flowers and a lot of this noise. But the fact that it's so simple and so sleek, I think there was a hole in the market, and we were able to concentrate all this in that.
Tell me more about. So that's a fascinating thing. So the U.S. market was the big market, and you obviously, as president of that unit, you were integral to that. Talk a little bit more about how you approach the U.S. market, because that's a real challenge for many European brands. I mean, the U.S. is a huge market, and it's often very complicated to figure out how to have these things translate. The example which every American appreciated, maybe, do you remember Mentos? I mean, Mentos,
yeah,
right?
Of course, yeah.
Do you remember the commercials they had, which were, not ironic or funny in Europe, and over here people were like, the fresh maker, really? Like, and it worked out, basically by accident, but often there's a real challenge in bringing that over. And actually, interestingly, you're not American, so talk a little bit about. Maybe that's everybody, but I just want to make that point. Tell me a little bit about how you did that, because that's a challenging thing to not, you were Moleskin was a transplant, and you were a transplant in that regard.
I think that the secret of success for Moleskin, and this came from Maria too. Moleskin never advertised anywhere in the world there is an Italian company, and because Moleskin wanted to be perceived as local. And actually, I'm going back to a story that I have from Ferrero, a very nice story about Nutella. Nutella did something very similar. If you go to, still today, if you go to a small town in France, they say Nutella. Nutella is French, it's not Italian. The French consume an awful amount of Nutella, the most in the world by far. I was shocked when I was working at Ferrero. I was looking like, wow, like the same as American consume, I don't know how many Tic Tac. And when I was telling Americans Tic Tac is an Italian brand, they were like, there is no way. No, the Tic Tac is not Italian. So companies sometimes they make it on purpose to make sure that you don't know this is so close to you. This is a local brand. This is close to you. Don't think about this is a local, but it's a global brand. It doesn't identify with the specific nation. I think that was there already, and I kind of like banked a little bit on it. I made sure that the Moleskin was communicated in a way that was very close to the micro influencer. Moleskin has been there with you in your college years, and Moleskin was there with you, but now you're a professional. Why don't you keep using it? And why don't you start to give it as a gift? So the biggest success that we had when I started at Moleskin, Europe was the biggest area for the group, for the Moleskin group, and then America became the bigger because we expanded in college. We were able to expand in a little bit of mass, to be fair, in Target, and Target has been a huge success. So Target, this is public knowledge. Target, the average price point of Target in the notebook in 2012, 2013, 2014 was like $8. And with Moleskin, the entire category went up. And when we were talking to the Target buyer, they were saying, no, there is no way we're going to be able to sell these. We need cheap, cheap, cheap. And say, if you don't want cheap, Moleskin is not going to be there. We were like, thank God we didn't need to beg. So we say, if you want Moleskin, we believe it's going to work. And that's what's going to happen. And the average price went from 8 to 25. And now today, this has sold at 26 at Target with a lot of SKUs sold at $37 at Target. So the success
So wait a minute. This is a fascinating thing. So you said, one of the things that was so powerful about how Moleskin thought about this was sold in bookstores, right? A book to be written. But then Target, that is not a bookstore, right? It's many things, but it's not a bookstore. So help us understand, or help me understand kind of how that happened, because that's obviously the volume would be huge, but like, how did that come about? Who decided to go talk to the Target folks?
Let's say was a little bit of a necessity. You remember Borders for sure. Borders declared bankruptcy. There was a huge hole for Moleskin, and at the time it was like, where is the Borders customer going now to buy books? Where is the Borders customer doing grocery shopping? Where is it? And everything was going to Target. The customer is there. And why they're not buying a very good notebook right now at there? Because there's a good notebook there. But the market is there. They're willing to spend the money to buy a good notebook because you use this for 3, 4, 5 months. And when you go back to ask, how much did you pay? The range is wild. When you ask people, how much did you pay for the notebook? It goes from $5 to $35. And they have no idea that they pay in reality $20. So this was up. That's exactly what happened. So we went to Target, and it was a little bit of, trying to push it, but the results were amazing. And it was from a very small section into, in the end, 1,200 store. I don't remember how much, but that's why really basically that the often the buyer in these big retailers, they all look at the short term, and they all look like, to maximize the dollar per shelf, and they don't see a little bit where the possibility of the consumer to spend more, right? And the customer was just there. Like they use Moleskin, they see Moleskin, they like it's a new notebook, and the existing also new customers. There was really not a good option there. So that's why we went from there to that. But the difference also, and you may have noticed, Paul, when you go to Europe, you see the Galerie Lafayette, you see Rinascente in Italy, you see El Corte Inglés in Spain. All these department stores, they have an entire floor of fine stationery, and you have fine paper, and you have fine pen, and you have fine notebooks, and you have Smithson, and you have the $300 notebook that the King of England used. And you go to Harrods, and you have the same. And you go to all the department stores. Then you come to the United States, and this is something that even as a tourist, I remember, I was like, Bloomingdale, there's none. There's absolutely none. At Neiman Marcus, at Nordstrom, there's no fine stationery. But then you go to our CRM, the Moleskin CRM in Europe, the top 10, it's all American and Canadian. So the demand is there, but there's really nowhere really to buy unless you have your own store. So that's what we did. We tried to convince Bloomingdale. Bloomingdale, to be fair, to be honest, did not want to risk that much. They tried Moleskin, they didn't try in a big way. So we tried to be close to the market in a different way. We open 14 stores for a stationery brand is incredible to think about it. There you have 14 retail stores of Moleskin in the United States.
Well, it's also fascinating too because, this idea of, and the vision actually of that she employed to make sure it wasn't perceived as an Italian brand is fascinating. And you're right. If you had asked me, even though theoretically I'm supposed to know everything about Moleskine prior to this interview, I would not have bet that. Right. And interestingly, same thing with Nutella, so which is, that's an extraordinary thing to choose to do. That's an interesting playbook. And so that essentially meant that you could have each local market own it in a way, right? Or feel that it was, because my reaction to the Moleskin, what you're describing in terms of the book and so on is, and again, this is so, provincial in a way, it's like, well, Americans, I just love to think that they're idea people, right? They're creative or whatever. And the answer is people everywhere think that, right? But you're like, oh, well, Moleskin obviously does really well in the States because everybody has their little ideas that they want to get down in their little notebook. And, to say that I don't have, I have about 1 billion of these things, and they're packed with all kinds of, medium good ideas at best. But I would never, it's interesting how that component of a brand is almost I wouldn't say it's a subconscious level, but it's this embedded assumption about how we perceive these things. And it's clean, right? It doesn't have something that's cognitively dissonant, right? Just like, whatever my perception of Italy is or France is or the previous, it just has this way of, it's very, very smart. But then you guys went further. This comes back to, really what I think is, again, one of the reasons why we're excited to talk to you. You start with a great idea like that. You figure out, it was made, which again, if you had asked me when Moleskine was founded, I think I probably would have said, early 20th century or something, because I did such a good job of sort of taking on that history and sort of melding it with the brand, which is like, I can't, that's a incredible job. But then you guys then took a look at the facts on the ground, about what was happening with the bookstore business and how that was a critical part. And then it sounds like you were instrumental in finding a way to be able to continue to get this product in front of customers, which by the way, I would imagine going back and saying, here's what we have to do. I don't know if it's ever been at a Target, but you're like, it wasn't necessarily obvious, right?
No, it was tough. It was tough. Also, this concept, that Moleskin in Europe is like, luxury, no luxury. It's like department stores. It's like, and then you go to a mass market. It was tough. And the same was a place like Staples, which is it's not, majority of the Staples retail are not great. But again, the 70% of the professional, 70% of the customers for Moleskine are professional, and a lot of small business owner or people that need to print stuff, they go there. So the customer is there, and I know that it seems mass, but it is mass because it's like 1,800 stores, and but the consumer is there, and you need to be close to the consumer, and often needs to speak because the consumer wants give you an example on planners. The people that buy planners, and they start to think, it's crazy, but people that are extremely organized, they start to think about the planners in June. Okay, I'm talking about the fiscal year planner, calendar year planner that starts in January 2026. They start to think about it June 2025. So
I'm laughing because I think I'm married to one of those people. It's like, why can't you plan? I am not that person. So it's a little bit of, there's planning conflict. But anyway, so they're prepared. That's extraordinary. That much
that's crazy. Still, majority of the volume are sold between December and January, because that's the other half of the population. That's like, shit, I need the planner, and they go by in January. So I am one of those, and I feel like you're one of those as well. But so it's a very specific moment, and you need to be there. You need to be there in June, and you need to be there in January. And unfortunately, you need to have a very good distribution, because you need to be close. Because sometimes now with Amazon one day, but Moleskin customers, they don't love Amazon, I would say. It's more of that kind of consumer. So you need to be close. And they don't care to go to a Staples and buy, because it's close and it's convenient, it's there, and they go and buy. Or the bookstore, you have to pin the books, you have to be close. So that was important. So it was hard to convince them. I know it's mass, but it's very important for the strategy to be there. At the same time, we were doing things to keep the brand elevated. It's true that we are at Target, but we are collaborating with the museum. We are collaborating with our local artists. We were collaborating with the Parsons schools. So you keep constantly go talk to the core. The creative are the core of the brand, but the reality is that only 3% of the revenue are coming from the artist. The majority is coming from the professional, right? So, but you need to keep nurturing that part, because it's the aspirational part, the creativity part. That's where you need to keep communicating and keep the brand up, because it's aspirational. I'm a professional, but I can be very creative. I need to find a solution for the business. I need to find a solution for this. It's not the creativity in the sense that you are able to draw a beautiful landscape. Creativity in every possible sense. Once you are in front of the paper and you start to think, then it's like, it's really where you get creativity, no matter what you're doing. If you have to do math, or you have to do an essay, or you have to draw. So
as you describe that, a few lives ago, I was in the fashion business peripherally. It's a fashion brand playbook, right? It's this aspirational. And what's extraordinary about it is, if you probably remember this, but Gucci at one point long ago lost the brand, really, because they ended up in what amounts to Target. And what's interesting about this is you guys figured out how to, elevate the brand, keep it elevated, but also be able to sell in mass market retailers. That is like a conjuring trick, right?
Because it's tough.
Gucci died. I mean, they were done, and they managed to resurrect it. But it was not easy, actually.
Yeah. I have to say on this point that a lot of small, very boutique bookstores or gift stores or stationery stores, they were really like, now Moleskin is at Target. It's too mainstream. We don't want it anymore. But that's where we try to segment it, right? To create particular collaboration with artists or other SKU that were not at Target, not on Amazon. And that's the very important thing, that you keep connected with your consumer. And usually, often, the owner of these small bookstores are the first, customers of Moleskin. So you really understand, if they feel alienated, that means also the customer is going to be alienated.
Well, and also just at a moment too when that whole industry was going through an enormous upheaval, right? I mean, they're dealing with Amazon, they're dealing with the big chains coming along, like the little bookstore, really a staple forever, essentially, and so you're trying to navigate that. When you got going with Moleskin, how you guys grew significantly during your tenure running the U.S. business? Is that correct?
Yeah, especially coming out of the pandemic, we did very well in a market that is not very well known, but it's a very big market, 25, 26 billion in total, I think. It's the promotional gift.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and even there, it's like you go to this show. It's called PPAI show. It's in Vegas in January. It's very painful to be in this show. I am extremely into environmental friendly argument and discussion, and go to the show is very painful because it's 90% is made for the landfill. It's like very painful to watch. It's all these little gadgets that are branded that they end up in the trash. And Moleskin did a very good job also there in general as a company, because it's really a brand that you go to a conference and you receive a Moleskin notebook. Even if you don't use it, it's a value product. So you give it to someone. You don't throw it away, for sure. And now with this water bottle that you receive, we have so many at home that at one point, even those, it's like, you throw it away. Unless now it's a Stanley Cup or, it's a trend. Anyway, we were able really to grow that business because there was a demand at that point. A combination of two things, very interesting. One, of course, the Great Resignation in the United States. So employer was spending a lot of money for their employee, and they started to buy a lot of nice gift for them, which was a Moleskin. They were working from home. So we really were able to, we saw that coming very early. I actually moved briefly to Italy during the pandemic. I didn't even open my boxes. I was sent back right away. And in October 2020, we saw this right away, and we were able to, together with our partner, Gemline, we were able to really do. So we grew a lot there. And also there was the hole in the market. There was similar to the retail. There was no good quality offer for notebook. There was really no brand. It was just this non-branded, low quality notebook, and people were spending $4 or $5 for a spiral notebook. It was not binded, and I was like, why has to be like that? Why can this? They're spending $35 for a Swell bottle. They can spend $35 for a notebook. So that's exactly how we were able to, to communicate the quality and the heritage. And this is the notebook of Van Gogh, and then you can inspire it every day. And that's how we were able to convince that was a very big part of the growth. But also, you mentioned before, the pandemic did very well for all these small bookstores and also Barnes and Noble, because the publishing business boomed, and that was fuel the rebirth of all these the bookstores, independent stores, and Barnes and Noble. And so that's what we're able to also bank on it. We had very good relationship. Yeah.
Another example of where if you were trying to guess what would be big around the pandemic, I would not have said bookstores, right? Because of course retail generally took a hit, and
2021 was one of the biggest publishing year for a long time. If you look at the sales of the top 5, Hachette, or I don't remember the other one, the sales were incredible. And even 2022, starts to go down again in 2023. But those 2 years were insane, and that's what saved a lot of bookstores.
Interesting.
I live in Brooklyn. There's a store where it was like packed with people outside all the time. It was like one per time with the mask, but people were going, and they were ordering online. So I remember those days.
We were in Brooklyn too. We were in Brooklyn Heights during the pandemic before we moved out to Boulder, and it was
books are magic, right? Yeah,
books are magic.
Yeah, those we
magic.
did a lot. We that's another localization. We collaborated with them a lot of time with the free decoration outside, and so those are that's the power of Moleskin, of the local part. You still feel it's local, you know.
You know, it's fascinating. I think what you're describing too is in terms of a playbook, which is, you know, some vision, some real vision in thinking about that, the brand core, and then application to a market. And, you know, that's often challenging because what makes great brands in some ways, I wouldn't say rigidity, but it's loyal to a foundation. And that can be a weakness as you try to figure out how to adapt to a new market. I mean, it's actually, you know, that in terms of your management ability to be able to sort of not only figure out what to do, but then be able to bring that back, you know, back to headquarters. Take a moment on that in terms of how you accomplish that, because that's not easy.
I think that being the general manager of a brand like this, where the headquarters did a very good job in developing the brand globally, and it wasn't easy. At the same time, after a few years, you gain trust, and you show how the market is replying to all this action in a very positive way. I also have been living in New York since 2012. My wife is from Texas. A lot of all my friends. I hated when I moved to the States to have Italian friends, so I really went deep into the culture, and because I wanted to learn, you know, for business too, because I came here for Ferrero and I really wanted to learn the culture. So that's what I did, and I think that helped me a lot, and that the headquarters really respected that. Despite being still have this very strong accent, I had a lot of knowledge of the American consumer, the culture. My kids were born here. My wife is from here. My family, my friends. So first of all, you need to build trust. Two, the fact that I was Italian helped a lot, because still a lot of managers were Italian. So that definitely helped. It's not nice to say, but it helped. It's like
it's reality.
Yeah, it's reality. It's like this yeah. So and we the approach was that really tried to respect the brand, localize without disrupting the brand, but adapting the brand. That's a very crucial part. If you try to really do something too radical and lose the DNA of the brand, is never good. But if you have a local, activation or local customization, it's always. I think it's not easy for the headquarters to approve it all the time, but it's good. So whoever is in my position can for sure relate. That it's not easy, especially with the Italians. They're very particular on the design, on the product. They're very proud of what they're doing. They're also like very passionate. And the first thing that you have to do is to bring them on board, and not being from very similar to the French. They're more objective, but it's very common for Italian and you have been in fashion, so you know very well. So they're very, very, particular on their thing, and it's hard to do sometimes. But if I can give a suggestion to someone that is listening, is to really try to bring them on board and try to always respect the DNA of the brand when you do the localization. It worked pretty well for me, and I think they really appreciated the approach.
Yeah. Well, and it delivered results. I mean, what's extraordinary is that, you delivered both, which is you preserve the integrity of the brand. I mean, people's perception of the brand, like, it's not associated with Target, I mean, you can buy it there. It's actually a fascinating thing to think about, which is that micro decision of going through Target and seeing Moleskin. You don't go, oh my God, they must have had extra notebooks. It's like, oh, it's like a little island. I mean, it's a fascinating thing now I have to watch. I'll have to see where I see Moleskin, but
But you always remember the story, you will remember the story Rockefeller Center. You remember the store at Boston Seaport. You'll never remember at Target, just because the stores are so beautiful. And by the way, they were losing a lot of money. But that's the objective, right? Because it's an open marketing, and that's what you want people to remember. Do you know how many times we sold so many notebooks in to corporation because the CEO was walking the Rockefeller Center, and they saw the Moleskin, and they saw that particular product. So that's what you remember. You don't remember the one at Target.
Yes, totally. And again, fashion playbook. Those stores on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, awesome. Exactly. Yeah. We're not inventing anything new. Yeah.
Well, so that ability to be able to think in a very creative way about a heritage and a brand, and figure out how to be very practical too, and trying to figure out how to actually in your next chapter as CEO of AT Cross, taking a really old brand and a brand in the States in particular, but actually around the world, with many, many people, certainly older people, have associations with this brand. Sometimes very, very positive. So to talk a little bit about starting with AT Cross, and I can see why they were thrilled to have you, because everything we just described is a real challenge. They have a real challenge today, right? Particularly in the States, as you point out, because there's not people aren't writing as many thank you notes. They're not taking in that moment necessarily. So talk a little bit about how that, what were the conditions when you arrived, and how you're thinking about the problem now?
Yeah, no, I think the brand, when the owner of Cross, it's a private equity, they called me. I was like, I really don't love to work with private equity. I mean, I've never worked with private equity. I don't like that, private equity, they buy. I'm very passionate about brand. So I need to work for a love brand. Like Ferrero, Nutella is a love brand. Moleskin is a love brand. And Cross, it's a love brand. Whoever I talked to, I was like, I love Cross. I have a Cross in my drawer I got from my grandfather. I still use it because it reminds me of him. So it's a love brand. You have all these stories. We have stories of people with the crossband. They were putting the crossband on the left side. A lot of people from the military, and they dodge a bullet thanks to the crossband. And you have this crossband with the bullet. Cross saved my life. I'm talking about at least five different letters.
Is that right?
It's crazy. I was like, it's a love brand. So for me, it's very important to love brand. And a private equity, the fact that you arrive, you squeeze and you sell it out, it's not the best. But they really convinced me about the project. They were not in a rush to sell it. They had the Cross since 2017, so it's already been 7 years. I was like, okay, that's really good. That means that they really want to create the value and then go to the next chapter. And then I was fascinated by. I knew Cross before, but then I started to study, and as you said, I was really fascinated because it's 1849. Like they were making pencil, and then he went through the factory in Rhode Island, and then there's so many stories about this. And the beauty of this is that there's still so many. The brand awareness is huge. So as a CEO, it's very hard to build brand awareness. You need to spend a lot of time, a lot of money. You need to have. Now we have this little treasure, right? People know the brand. We just need to. Let me say it's the easier part of being a marketer is to refresh the brand, to reignite, to give them the reason to reconnect with the brand, give them the reason to rediscover this heritage, rediscover this beautiful product, and try to reconnect with the brand and give them the reason to buy it again. So that's a little bit easier than just launch a completely new
Yes.
brand from a marketing point of view. So what I found, you asked what I found. I found the company, the brand is very strong, and that's why I joined, and that's the most important thing. What I found, it was like the brand was really the brand was still talking only to their loyal customer, right? They were talking to, if you go on Instagram, it's like very much of a professional look. It's like our loyal customers are very important and we love them. And of course, we will keep making these beautiful products for them. And the DNA, we will never, as we talk about most, we will never touch that. That DNA of the brand is there and it's beautiful. At the same time, we really need to try to connect to the new generation, because millennials and Gen Z, they don't know much about this brand. And let me tell you, when I went back home, my wife, she's 35, 37, and she's from Texas, and she didn't know the brand. When I gave them a nice box of Cross and was like, wow, how many times I did a gift, I made a gift, I gave a gift to someone and it wasn't that nice, and this is super nice, right? So that's the part what I'm trying to do. Leverage the heritage, leverage also the loyal customer, which are, a little bit older, but to give them the reason to give this back as to your kid, to your nephew, and let them discover the brand again, because this is a great brand. The pen is basically handmade. And the sad part about all this, talking about PPAI before, there's 52 billion plastic pen that are thrown away every year.
No.
52, yeah.
Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
52 billion?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's $1-2 pen, right? Only TD Bank, I tell you, TD Bank, buyers at TD Bank makes 7.5 million plastic pen every year, just to give away. They're famous for that, but just TD Bank. So if you think about it, all the pen in the world that you have gone around and you see, it's insane. So that's the part, and think that these you can last 40 years, right? So I understand that people don't use pen anymore, but if you think about it, how many times you use a pen? You use pen a lot. You go to the doctor and you go to the little office and you go here and you go there and you go to the school and you come in contact with this cheap plastic pen so many times, and it's just a shame. So we need to also talk about all these things and understanding why it's important for the younger generation. When you go to a meeting and you write down instead of digitizing, you retain 70% more information. You are, I don't know the percentage right now, but there's studies that you are much more creative. You will get better idea. You are more efficient in school when you write down notes instead of digitizing. And for kids, this movement is very dangerous, because if you do this movement and you don't do this movement, you don't develop an entire part of the brain. It's the Neanderthal need to write on the cave. There's a reason why, right? So,
Right.
and it's our need as a human. We need to write stuff. That's why kids is always like, it's important. So that's what we need to do now across. We really need to connect with the new generation, and again, we will still, but while still catering our core customer.
And so this idea of, to make the Moleskin connection between a notebook and this book that is going to be written, and a pen, and is it the gift giving? Is that the foundation, or is it related to creative product? Like, what's the anchor in terms of being able to elevate the brand in that regard?
I think that the anchor is always the aspirational part. Cross is the pen used by people that made it in their life. Powerful people. It was the pen of the president. It was the pen of the general. It was the pen of scientists. It was the pen. If you see there's a lot of we have. I have so much vintage stuff. People that use cross pen in the past years. The thing is, to the younger generation, if you have a cross pen, you made it in life. You made it. So the aspirational part. You are a smart person. You are a powerful person. You made it, and that's the gift part. Meaning, like, to convince someone, if someone made the graduation or the first job, is a nice thing to give back. We don't do it anymore. I received the Mont Blanc when I was 16 by my father. When I won, I don't remember what I won, a prize at the school. And we need to bring this back. Instead of giving something that doesn't last, this can last 40 years, right? But that's the part where it's younger generation, they don't know. They don't know.
It's interesting you should describe that, because something we were talking earlier about stationery. People forget. I forget, even though I actually read a fair amount of thank you notes, handwritten on Crane stationery, right? Which has my middle name Eldon on it. And people were like, it's so much, not so much the thank you, it's like, your middle name is Eldon? Anyway, but I send these things, and I think we forget how important those moments are, not just for us, but actually for the person who receives it. And it's quick, right? I mean, it used to be people. I mean, certainly in Europe, as you point out, people still do this, but here in the States, I think people have forgotten that. I was recently saw a friend of mine who, they had something really tragic happen in their family, and they put up a GoFundMe, and we gave a little money for that, and then we're helping. We're doing what neighbors do, right? Nothing too dramatic, actually, but deeply appreciated. Not because we put $100 into this thing; it's because they felt seen, right, and they felt acknowledged. And what you're describing here, which I think is really right, and what's powerful about the cross pen. And again, I have a few that I got as a young person. And then at one point I bought one. I have this thicker gold one, which I know you guys still make. And, but that idea of being able to take a half a second to acknowledge what has happened is a big, big idea. And it's beyond the cross pen, right? All of us are just rushing around too much, right? It's been lost in a way. But I think it's a really interesting thing. I also, the other thing I think is so powerful about the cross brand, we were talking about, in our previous conversation about how Cross is a bridge actually between Parker and Mont Blanc, which is a really interesting place to be, particularly because it has the benefit of being able to feel like a luxury item, but it's accessible to virtually all Americans, right? I mean, not everybody, but most people can afford to buy a really nice cross pen and acknowledge somebody else.
Yeah.
And something that's going to last 40 years is really high quality and so on. But it's not a Mont Blanc. It's not $1,000.
No.
Like you can actually have this thing come along that is a signifier.
Yeah.
And there's something really there's something fundamental about that. It also speaks to a challenge you have, because you're not just trying to get people to buy pens. You're trying to have them refine a ritual that has been lost in a way.
That's correct. That's the part that I think that the new generation is. I find that there is more available to this. I know that they are so much into the digital world, but there's also this growing movement of touching grass and digital detox. And I think I'm too positive for the future, but I think that also we will rediscover the flip phone. At one point, we're gonna be. I hope, because I have two young, 3 years old daughter and a 5 months old daughter. I hope that in 4 or 5 years, all the schools are gonna ban phones and ban iPad, and they're not gonna able to digitize anything. So I think that the market is ready. And I'm sure you are familiar with Substack now. yeah, you're familiar. Now Substack is like growing, and we are back to the long content, slow, long content. And I don't know why, but I connect this Substack with the concept of touching grass and the concept of going back to write on paper. So it's true, it's a challenge that I have, but I think that all the company have that are in this field. But I think that the younger generation is, I think something is there is just we need to find the right way. Maybe the little viral thing, I don't know, on TikTok or something like it's a movement though. By myself, I'm not gonna be able to do. And I talk to other people, the pen specialist stores, for example. There's a beautiful store in New York, it's called the Fountain Pen Hospital. They are amazing. And it's like you go back in time when you go in there. At the same time, they need to start to talk. They invite students there, very young students, to the store. So it's a movement that is trying together also with Moleskin as well. Moleskin was collaborating with Doctor, trying to tell people, if you do put pen to paper, you're smarter, you're more intelligent, you retain more information. So it's like, and it wasn't advertised. Moleskin was just, please put more pen to paper, right? So it's a more general thing, but I think that the younger generation is ready. The market is ready to have these, to go back to what it was, writing more, give the gift of a pen more, and also trying to get, to go back to put pen to paper at the end of the day.
So you were talking before about you found a great PE firm as a sponsor here and for Cross and True Growth PE has that quality. Like, folks, it's different. I mean, there are different ways to be able to have private equity work. It sounds like the approach that they're taking with Cross is pretty compelling, given the value that it takes a little time for that to all translate into results. But that's another challenge. Maybe you could take a moment talking about, you had this at Moleskin, you had an Italian brand trying to make it work in the conditions on the ground in the US, and you have a PE sponsor who is, has held this thing and they want to see the results, and being able to bridge between really the atmospherics of what you're describing about a brand and still make results. Talk a little bit about how you are managing that part at Cross.
I think that the P has been incredibly supportive of me. I think they've been also very realistic in terms of, we're not going to go back to, this was a $300 million company back in the days, selling in all these countries. Like, they've been also realistic from a results point of view. At the same time, is really, we go back to what I said before. I think it's very important to bring them on board on the strategy and create a little bit of trust. I've been in this environment of luxury stationery and dealing with the heritage brand, and this is what's the plan. This is how we're going to leverage the strength of the brand while trying to bring in the new, new results, but also the new consumer and how to refresh it. So the bridge is important, that trying to create the value without touching the DNA of the brand. And this is very important. So how to make a 108 years old brand cool again, important again, relevant again. And we not only without destroying the DNA, but also leveraging the DNA, talking about the DNA. This is the only way you can do this. This is the only way I know how to do this. But I think that they agree with me, and it's a beautiful thing that we are all on board. So bringing the result by not only talking about, but leveraging the heritage, it's crucial. Because someone else can come and make this pen, Let's be clear. It's all handmade. We have a lot of knowledge about it, but someone else can come and take this. No one can take the 108 years old history. No one. So that's the thing that we have. That's the only thing that crosses. No one can take the story of your grandfather taking the pen from the drawer and say, "Oh, this is my grandfather gave it to me when I was a kid." That's the part that we only have, and we have to leverage it. People need to know that.
People need to know that. So, I mean, that's fascinating. And it's an interesting thing, too, because that ability to hold those two ideas in your head, Einstein had a great line about that, which is basically James's ability to be able to hold two very incongruous ideas in your head at the same time. And there's nothing, frankly, more incongruous than sort of this not ephemeral, but very, this idea of brand and the brand DNA. And then like, I got to move some units this month and I got to figure out how to make that go. Like that's a real challenge, for anybody. What's the elastic band in the cross business now? Like, what's the Moleskin equivalent in terms of the ability to be able to set it apart and make it be the thing that you think was part of that ritual or is the thing that you go to? Because, Moleskin actually, the other thing that's incredible about Moleskin is, no one can think of another brand that does what Moleskin does. Like I can't. I mean, but there are other people who make pens and who also have maybe a similar, some heritage and so on. What do you think the thing it is that allows it to really set itself apart, or what's your sense of that? What that is?
Yes, there are other brands of pen, but I think that the beauty of Cross is really like the product itself is amazing because it's very distinctive. The fact that the top part, and this I learned when I joined the company, the top part of the pen is very distinctive, and people will see from far where you will wear when it was a Cross, because the top part is very particular. So, but I think that the fact that, for example, this was the pen of the presidents for a long time, there is a unique thing. And why was the pen chosen by the president? Because it was the pen of the people that were successful in life. Powerful people that made it, people that are, they're smart and they were successful. I think that's the part where, again, no one can steal it. And I think that's what set us apart from the other one. Because Parker, for example, it's a big brand, but Parker was a good pen. It was British colonial brand, I would say. It's connected sometimes. It's very strong in other. But it's like, and Montblanc was a very high quality brand connected with luxury. But today you go into a Montblanc store and you don't see the pen anymore. You see leathers. It's like they start to play in another. They took forever to arrive there, and they did a wonderful job, of course. But it's not anymore about the pen. Let's be honest. Here is it's about the aspirational part. I think that's what set us apart. We are the only brand that can say, listen, we have so many people around in the States that know the brand. And we have a little treasure, which is the refill. People come back, they only buy the refill from us because they want a real original refill across. So people are coming back to us, and that's where we need to re-establish the connection. I think that's the most distinctive part, for sure. And that's what made me fall in love with the brand too, because when they, I was talking to the PE, I was like, and asking around, I've seen such a strong connection with the brand, and because of that,
interesting. Well, so I want to end on one of my favorite things we talked about last time, and it's a story that you were telling about Ferrero.
Yeah.
And so just for context, Ferrero is enormous. How big is Ferrero as a company?
Now with the acquisition, 24, 25 billion, something like that. I don't know.
Big business, right?
Yeah.
And, most Americans may not know about it, but, just incredibly iconic brands.
Yeah.
But you told me something that I thought was just fascinating, which is that Ferrero's run like a deli. Can you explain more about that? Because I thought that was, and it's really been a critical part of their success in terms of how they're able to stay nimble and so on. Can you talk about what that came from?
I'm sure people are going to write books about this, but the Ferrero company, it's like we always say, the employee at Ferrero, we were saying at the time was 11 billion. It's an $11 billion company run like a deli. It's like still the owner showing up every day and making decision forever. I remember I was in Alba, this little town in the northwest of Italy, where still the headquarters was, and Michele Ferrero, which is the founder he was showing up 92 years old every morning, and he would like taste new products, spit it out, and say this is una merda, this is shit, like and then he will come up with an idea. Today we're gonna do this, and then the only way to do this is if you don't have process, right? Oh, the owner said we're gonna do that, and we were going to do that. No, he was a genius. He was, but we will do that. If you are Procter and Gamble with processes, procedures, and you can do that. At the same time, when you are Procter and Gamble and the market is asking you something quick, you're not going to be able to do it. So Nutella, Nutella in Europe is the Nutella and Go is called. You have breadstick.
Right.
Yeah, and in America we were like, wow, this is not selling. What's going on? What are we doing? And one guy was like, but we don't like bread. We eat pretzel. Pretzel. Okay, let's do it.
So that was so basically the idea is run as a deli, which is they're super nimble, but process not so much.
No. Now it's a different. I mean, I left in 2013, so I left a long time ago. But they bought a lot of. Now they bought Kellogg, the cereal. It's a big company. But I'm telling you, like we were really. It was like very messy. At the same time, it was fun. It was like no procedure. I met I have friends with the big, especially American corporation or German corporation. There's a lot of procedure, but it was not very, very flexible, which was the secret of success. They were able to quickly react to market needs or problems. At the same time, it was like, a lot of inefficiency, of course, but they could afford it because family-owned company and the family, very good family, the Ferrero family, they did not. Their objective was really not to make huge money. Their objective was really to be proud of the company that they had. It was very important for them. Of course, they were super rich, but it was nice. It was nice.
Well, it's funny. It's a great place to end too, because I think this idea of calibration and listening to needs. It's interesting. P&G of all companies. Actually, we were just recently talked to Hina Argwal, who's CFO of Duluth, and she was at P&G and was in those teams. And they do something that P&G is known for being able to listen to what's going on and then run a process and a playbook to be able to respond. But most companies have a real challenge of doing those two things together. But I would argue that I'd rather have a calibrated, a company that calibrates against what customers need versus process, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's going to think that, and pride. I mean, I don't think that's a small thing either, in terms of a culture, this
Absolutely.
is whatever, this 12 years later, it came up, pretty quickly. I think there's something beautiful in that. And,
Absolutely.
and they make the money, whatever, but like the ability to be able to deliver, products that they're proud of and that make sense in the market. And
very, very, yeah. That was always important for them. It was very refreshing. It was a great place to work. Yeah.
Well, and it's also like, as we come up in our careers, the ability to be able to learn, to work in cultures and in companies and actually help our people to see this, right? And is such a critical part of not only making the current company good, but being able to have those types of messages continue, and propagate. I think is so important. So I feel like I need to go buy some Nutella and toast the Ferrero family. So, Pino, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. It was fun.